Welcome back, degenerates. This is Locked In, and I'm your host, Mason Cameron at PFF underscore Mace on Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta at Vishaal underscore Gupta 95 on Twitter. It's week 12. We've been a little bit spoiled with the really top tier games these recent weeks. And now this week, we're really down to only a handful of really solid games on the slate. One in particular, which we are going to talk about today. You have it on your card. We're going to be
Yep.
betting it. It's funny because we talked about this last week. Generally, we see a lot of money making opportunities in these ugly games, which we have quite a few this week, and we have some money making opportunities in that. But we also got the good game on the slate here as well. How you doing? How you living, partner? You ready to talk some football?
Super ready. Let's get into it. Like you said, not the greatest slate in the world, but still some solid matchups. I think the Sunday night game, you have two teams above 500 playing for playoff seeding. Same thing on Monday night. The up and coming Carolina Panthers making some noise. It's going to be a fun game. So I think we got some interesting games on the slate this week. And then if you guys haven't taken a peek at the schedule later in the season, it's going to get good, especially looking at week 18. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but we got like 5 or 6 different games that could be like winner go home games right in week 18. So I'm getting hyped already.
You
I
gotta
know we're
love
still
it.
a
You,
few weeks out.
you gotta love it. Schedule makers did it right last year, and it looks like it's gonna come down to the wire again this year. And of course, Panthers are cooking. Keep pounding. And
Yep.
we're at it. But first and foremost, for anybody who is new here, we don't talk about every single game on the slate. We pick out just a few of our favorites, along with some other bets that we do like on the week. All of those bets go into our Discord. If you want to get in that Discord to ask us any questions about games that we didn't talk about, or to get all of our picks, make sure you go to importantnonsense.com, become a member. That's how you get in there, and that's how you can ask us all your questions. We're also getting down into the playoff push for fantasy. I think we're just a week or two out. If you want to make
Yep.
the most of that, make sure you guys get in there. Talk to our guys over in the Discord. Jason's there. Everybody's there. They're going to answer all of your questions. And of course, make sure you guys check Jason and the whole crew out every single week. We have like 3 or 4 shows a week where Jason's on here on our YouTube, on our Twitter, on our Twitch, answering questions. We don't have a Twitter. On our Twitch, answering questions. So make sure you guys hit him up there with everything you got. And first things first, we have to talk about a little bit of a surprising upset
Yeah.
on Thursday night. I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but I did tweet out how it was a little bit crazy that this Houston team was getting +6 at home. And they came out as 5.5, 6 point dogs. It looks like in some places it might have even closed at around 4.5. I guess people were definitely, tailing on that one. And they ended up winning this game 23-19, win straight up as home dogs in the under at 43.5 here. And obviously, storyline of the game is this Texans D is for real. They came to play 8 sacks, 2 interceptions, both by Caleb Bullock. And that last one at the end sealed the victory for them while the Bills were driving. I mean, and what is there to say? Josh Allen was more or less bottled up in this game. There was a point early in the game where he took a pretty tough hit, and that I think that one ended up counting as a rush. I think he landed over the line of
Yeah, he got
scrimmage.
that line of scrimmage on that one.
That
Yeah.
could have been 9 sacks, but he, grimaced, grabbed his hand. I think everybody, all NFL fans, even if you were backing the Texans, kind of held their breath on that one because it did not look great. And to be frank, he really wasn't that good in this game. Now, his box score number might have looked decent by the end of this thing, but overall, 70% of his yardage came after the catch, like from that big catch by Khalil Shakur that I think he took it like 75 plus yards on that one nearly. in a lot of this game could have been a lot worse than it really ended up as. One score, just 4 points, with the Bills and having the ball and driving towards the end. I mean, it could have been a lot worse for Buffalo when we talk about they had a kick return for a touchdown. Davis Mills' accuracy, especially early in the game, left a ton of points out on the field for the Texans. They had that first interception that turned the ball over in plus territory, not far from the red zone, and they managed to only come away with three from that, leaving points on the board. It could have been a lot more ugly. And then, of course, they had, much to my own chagrin, as a James Cook under 75 and a half better, James Cook with that big explosive run in the first quarter going for 50 plus. Now, the Texans were a team that have been excellent against the run and have only allowed 11 rushes of over 10 yards. That's the tied for the fewest in the NFL. They were the only team in the NFL to not allow a run for 25 yards or more this season. And of course, James Cook, I mean, he's a dog, man. He exploded 50 right off the bat, absolutely killed the under there. I mean, joke's on me, right? But frankly, it was those plays that really put any amount of points on the board for this Bills team. Without those big ones, this game could have been a lot worse. What did you make of this game, partner? What did you see in this one? What are you excited to see moving forward?
Let's start with Houston. We'll give them all the props in this one, especially the defense. Like you said, it's just unbelievable what they're doing, especially those two guys on the line, Will Anderson, Daniil Hunter. I think there was some stat that they have like 11 or 12 sacks combined over their last 3 games. That's like more than some teams might have on the entire season. So these guys are on another planet right now, what they're doing. Their back end is phenomenal too, led by Derek Stingley. So they're shutting people down. They're playing phenomenal ball on that side of the ball. And then, you're probably getting CJ Stroud next week, and you're, 2.5 games behind the Colts right now. Colts have to go into Kansas City. They're a pretty big dog right now. So if Indy loses that game, you're 2 games back, and you still have 2 games against Indy. So for all intents and purposes, you control your own destiny right now if you're Houston. So keep doing what they're doing on defense. Hopefully they can find some momentum offensively with Stroud coming back, and with the emergence of Jaden Higgins as like a true threat opposite Nico Collins. Like, you can make some noise right now if you're Houston. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. They do have some hard games coming up. They still have to play, like we said, Indy twice. You have to play Kansas City. So it's not going to be easy, but they have everything in front of them right now. For Buffalo, man, it's bizarre. I mean, I don't know if you can feel worse about a 7-4 team than you do right now about these Buffalo Bills. I mean, it's just tough. I think it's something we brought up early in the season, but it continues to rear its head. It's just these sacks that Josh Allen is taking where he's scrambling around for a long time in the backfield. In the past, he's done this from time to time. Usually he either is able to find a way to make a play down the field or he's able to get rid of the ball without taking any too much of a big hit. But for some reason this season, he is taking sacks back there and it is just killing them in a lot of situations. And I'm not sure why that's happening. Obviously, the offensive line could not do anything against the Houston defensive line. And I think big part of talk online right now has just been the lack of weapons that this team has. I think there's not much they can do about that for the rest of the season. They're going to have to deal with who they have going forward and find a way to make it work. So I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see what they can do offensively to fix some of their issues. I mean, I think the easiest solution here, let's just get James Cook, 20, 25 touches a game. That shouldn't be anything too difficult. He's a phenomenal player with the ball in his hands. Throw him the ball. It seems like he's not catching nearly as many passes as he probably should. He has the ability to do it. So I think they probably just got to focus more on James Cook and let him be a feature player on that offense right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you in that fact. And that's actually one of the angles when I was taking the James Cook under, was that when you look at this team, they were 0 and 3 when they were running for negative EPA per rush. And I thought that this was going to be a big opportunity because this Texans team, they have been absolutely stellar. First in EPA per rush allowed, first in success rate allowed. They were first in yards per carry on designed runs allowed. So this was an opportunity. And to see how well, or excuse me, to see how poorly Buffalo did, even when getting him the ball. And, most of that EPA came from that big run there, obviously.
Right.
But frankly, he didn't have all that bad of a game otherwise, and that needs to be where their focus comes to. And I understand that they were down a little bit throughout this game, but really, this game wasn't that far out of reach for pretty much the entirety of it. You need to be confident enough to to run the football and trust James Cook to do these things. And just another note on what you had just said with the 11 sacks from both of these guys. Danielle Hunter, who I swear I've never felt like my arms are smaller than looking at Danielle Hunter's pictures, because my
Yeah.
lord, the dude is humongous. And Will Anderson, how good they have played together. To just put this into perspective, the San Francisco 49ers all season have 11 sacks.
Jeez.
And that's what those two guys have in 3 games together. So that is all you need to know about how well that this Texans defense is going to be able to push them, and really some of the struggles that we've seen with Buffalo. It is going to be a bit of a question. I really think that people were talking about right before this game, we're talking about catching the Pats and maybe becoming the number 1 seed in the AFC, and
Yeah. That's
I
that's tough now.
that door's
I don't
closed
know.
now. That's not gonna be
Yeah.
happening, I don't think. So, definitely gonna be an interesting thing to watch moving forward. And, don't look now. We talked about if the Colts lose that game,
Yep.
if the Colts win that game, that's pretty good, because the Chiefs move down an extra game. The Texans move up that game in the wild card race, with the team in
Yep.
front of them being Jacksonville. All you got to do is come out, play your ball game, beat Jacksonville in that game, take a couple more wins, and this Texans team has a wild card. So, I
Yep.
mean, gone from dead in the water to pushing their way into a playoff spot definitely sounds like something this Texans defense can will that team to do. So, it's going to be something interesting to watch as we head down the stretch. There's a lot of parity in the NFL right now. There's a lot of parity in the NFL.
That's why it's the best, man.
That's why it's so good. Any given Sunday. So the first game on our slate here, V, that we're gonna be talking about is the New York Giants heading into Detroit to take on the Lions. This is a prime example of shopping early and shopping often, because this game was at 10.5 all week until Jackson Dart was unexpectedly ruled out due to not clearing the concussion protocol. Jameis Winston expected to make his second straight start. That moved this line up to 12.5. Now, V, I'm going to ask you 2 questions on this one, because just a spoiler alert, you guys, V is smart enough, shops early and shops often, and got Detroit at minus 10.5, which I love. V, tell us why you took them at 10.5. And then I also want to hear if you're comfortable taking them at minus 12.5 as well.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I would still take them at 12.5. I honestly have been anticipating that Jameis was playing this entire week. I didn't realize that Dart even really had too much of a chance to play in this one. So I was surprised to see this line move a full 2 points today. And I guess Dart was a little bit closer to playing than I had originally thought. So I think I got a little bit lucky on this one, taking the line early in the week like I did. It just, again, I was not anticipating any quarterback change happening. So a little shocked to see that line move late in the week, but very fortunate to get it at 10.5. But even at 12.5, I think this one just makes too much sense. Looking at this Detroit team, they have not lost a back-to-back games since the 2022 season. When these guys lose, Dan Campbell has them ready to go the following week, and that's exactly what I expect to happen this week. This Detroit offensive line got absolutely manhandled last week in Philly. That defensive line of the Eagles just took them to work. So many tip passes, so much pressure. Jared Goff had no chance in that game. This Giants defense, not nearly as good. They are tied for third most points per game allowed in the league at 27.3. They're allowing the second most rushing yards per game at just under 150 rush yards per game. I think this is going to be a massive Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery game on the ground. I think there's also plenty of holes in this Giants secondary. We just saw Jordan Love have a lot of success pushing the ball down the field on this Giants defense. So also expecting a lot of stuff from a big games from St. Brown and Jameson Williams in this one. I just think all around this Detroit offense is going to be clicking at 100% in this game. So I expect fireworks from their offense. On the flip side, even though Detroit's offense struggled last week in Philly, their defense really kept them in that game. They only allowed 16 points to a Philly offense, despite turning the ball over on downs like 4 or 5 times and their offense not doing anything. So kudos to this Detroit defense. They're playing well. Held Jalen Hurts to just 135 passing yards in that one. They're allowing the eighth fewest rushing yards per game. They're also allowing the eighth fewest passing yards per game. And they've allowed 22 or fewer points in 3 of their last 4 games. So I think, yeah, I like what I'm seeing from Detroit's defense. And I think their offense is going to explode in this one. No Kayvon Thibodeau and Paulson Adebo for the Giants defense. And then they put their right tackle, Evan Neal, on IR this week. So going to be a big blow on that offensive line. So, going to see a lot of Aiden Hutchinson in this one. So, yeah, 10.5, 12.5, wherever we're getting it, this should be a nice blowout win for the Lions. Get them back on track.
Yeah, and you know what? To be frank, I'm with you with the quarterback change thing. I'm not even sure that the change from Jameis, if I'm completely honest with you, I would expect the opposite because
You
Jameis
think?
has just played better than what we've seen out of Dart. I mean, Jameis is going to throw the ball around, but he's a guy who's going to fit balls into some areas that maybe he shouldn't at times, but he's also going to be ripping the ball and throwing it. And he makes plenty of good throws too. Whereas I just don't know that we've seen that great
I
of
will say,
play from Dart.
as somebody who watched that entire Chicago game, Dart was really good. Not just on the ground, he was throwing the ball with confidence all over the field. He was doing stuff in structure, out of structure. I think there has been a lot of improvement from Dart as the starts have gone on. So I do want to give him some credit there. But
Yeah.
you're right; it's a very small sample size as
Right.
compared to what we've seen with Jameis over the years, for sure.
No, and I do agree. And Dart definitely does deserve his flowers. And I think that the big question for me in some of the sample that we did see from Dart is not necessarily just tied to Dart because Dart's ascension definitely comes around the same time that they gave Cam Scattaboo the nod to get in there. And you know, frankly, I felt like this offense actually felt productive when they were doing what they wanted on the ground. And now it feels like they had to revert back to this unit that we sort of saw, last season for most of it, where they really didn't have answers or even early on in the year. So, I am with you on that. It is an interesting sort of case study as we continue to move forward with this offense. Obviously, new play caller and things like that. There's a lot of moving parts with what's going on in this Giants team right now. So, and the other thing that I really, love here, what we talk about is this Lions team is a team that absolutely wants to get after it and run the football. Is there a much better team to come out and run the football against than the Giants? Not really. No. The Giants have been one of the worst teams stopping the run all season. No matter the metric you look at, success rate, EPA per play, explosive runs, that is where they have really struggled. Some angles just to add on to it that I would definitely be looking at in this one is going to be some longest rushing angles from Monty and Gibbs and seeing what sort of look we can get on for that because this team is allowing explosive after explosive after explosive on the ground. There are not it's been more or less the Bengals and the Giants at the bottom of the league and coincidentally without Ed Oliver, the Buffalo Bills. It's been those teams at the bottom of the NFL in EPA per rush and explosive run percentage. So, that's definitely going to be an angle that I'm tailing to. And I mean, while it's a narrative, this Lions team doesn't lose twice. This Lions
Yeah.
team comes out and absolutely blows the doors off of teams after they lose. So I'm right there with you. I think that this is a vast difference in level of talent. As soon as we were just talking about parity, like this is not one of those type of games. This is a Lions
This is
team.
not going to be one of those any given Sunday games for the Giants, unfortunately. They're not quite there yet.
Yeah, this is a Lions team that is better than the 6-4 record they have would indicate. So I'm right there with you. The next game we have on the slate here, I mean, we're ripping the Band-Aid off right off of the rip, V. We have a
Let's do it.
good one. We have a good one. We have the Indianapolis Colts heading into KC to take on the Chiefs. The Colts, how the tables have turned. The Colts fighting for the 1 seed in the AFC. The Chiefs fighting for a wild card spot in the AFC, coming off of what is it, back-to-back losses over the last 3 weeks because they had their bye week tucked in there. Chiefs, the books are always going to do this, and I never quite
Yeah.
understand it. The Chiefs -3. I get it that they're at home, but -3.5 here in Arrowhead. Game total on this one, 50 to about 50.5 points, depends on where you're shopping. What are you looking at in this one that has you intrigued to bet this high profile matchup?
Yep, I'm going to go right back to what we talked about last week, and I'm going to take another under on a Chiefs game. And this one is even higher than last week's. I got it at under 50.5. And oh boy, this is just way too big of a number on this total. I'm not sure where this number is coming from. It seems like Kansas City is still getting the benefit of the doubt in terms of their offense, and books just taking it from what they were in their past in terms of being this high-powered, explosive offense. But that's just not the case anymore. Only 2 of their games this season have gone above 50 total points for the Kansas City Chiefs. The most recent one was week 5 against the Jaguars. So it's been almost 2 months since they've had a game go over 50 total points. Their defense is still phenomenal. They have allowed 22 or fewer points in 4 of their last 5 games. They rank in the top 3 in the league in terms of fewest passing yards allowed, along with fewest rushing yards allowed. So they're playing very, very well on that side of the ball. The question, though, and the concern is their offense. We saw it last week. They just stalled out way too many times on offense, could not put the ball in the end zone. They cannot do really much of anything on the ground, which I think is a big deterrent for them without Isaiah Pacheco, who is going to be once again out this week. He's missed their previous 2 games. And in those 2 games, they have just a total of 120 rushing yards combined from their running back. So that's an average of 60 per game. That's not going to get it done in this offense. You need more to Kareem Hunt. You need more to Brashad Smith and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're just not getting enough out of the running attack, and it's putting too much pressure on Mahomes in that passing game, and it's just not working out right now. I think it's also going to be tough for this Kansas City passing game going up against this Indy defense that's going to likely have a brand new secondary from what we've seen all year. Sauce Gardner, obviously, he's going to be playing in his second game with the Colts, and they're also expecting to have Charvarius Ward back after his concussion in week 6. So for the first time, they're hoping to have both of those guys out there, and that is a formidable tandem in the secondary for the Colts. So, I mean, if you're not going to run the ball because of your own issues, and then you're going to have some issues passing the ball because of the tough secondary, like, what are you expecting to see out of this Kansas City offense that makes you believe that you can come anywhere close to a 50.5 point total? So that's where I'm at. I'm going to take the under. We'll see what the Colts offense can do. That's going to be a big storyline for me. Obviously, they had some struggles a couple weeks ago when they had to go into Pittsburgh. So I think this is a big test for them. If they want to be taken seriously as a real contender in the AFC, you got to go on the road against a good defense and show us that this offense can actually work. Daniel Jones can actually be that guy who is somehow in an MVP conversation this late into his career. So this is going to be a big test for Indy's offense. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do. But just looking at this total, way too high for me. This should have been way closer to the 45 number we saw last week in Denver. So I'm going to take the under here.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing that we do have to talk about is the reason this number is so high is because on paper, this is the top 2 teams in EPA per play. Now, what that means is, in a nutshell, 2 very efficient offenses that are playing at a high level, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what we've seen from this Chiefs team over their last 2 games. And what we just saw, as you said, is this team tried to force throwing the ball all over the field for their last 2 games, and that's not going to work against Denver. That didn't work against Buffalo. And we just saw the method that you have to use to beat Buffalo, and that's to run the football. They did it very well. The Texans did. So what is happening here is that this is a miscommunication. two of the Chiefs' four, or excuse me, two of the Chiefs' three lowest EPA per play games happened over their last two games. So this is not this team that was second overall in EPA per play. And when you look at it, I think books are sort of falling into, while analytics is very, very important, context is very important in that as well. And so when we talk about the other side of the ball with the Colts secondary, the Colts in EPA per pass allowed this year ranks about 17th in the NFL. Not really that good, not really that formidable.
Yeah.
But like you just said, V, now they have Sauce Gardner. And then they're going to be getting Charvarius Ward back. That is two very good cornerbacks that are going to be playing. And not to mention that Ward has knowledge of how this Chiefs team wants to play. He played against them in practice for 2, 3, 4 years. So
Right.
when we say that, this is going to be a new look Colts defense, especially on the back end. And this is a Chiefs offense that has regressed over the last 2 weeks, back to what we'd seen for maybe the last year or so, where they were good but not great. Now everybody was very, hype on them because they were the previous 6 weeks or whatever, they were playing great. Now obviously that's a big sample size and that's something we need to take it into account. But I do not think that it is adequate for it to be a 50.5 point line. I like the under as well. I'm also going to be siding with the Colts. One of the big reasons is because I don't know that the Chiefs can force the turnovers. Turnovers in a way are very fluky. Even ones where,
Right.
Daniel Jones has actually been rather okay with the football. He hasn't really put it in a ton of harm's way. It's not like a bunch of guys are dropping interceptions. He doesn't have a ton of turnover worthy plays. So what that happens is when he comes into a situation where they had, what was that in that Steelers game? 6, I think.
5 or 6. Yeah,
five,
that was
five
that
or
was a rough one
six
for him.
turnovers. Like those type of instances don't really translate into the ether. So I'm interested to seeing this one as well. It's obviously going to be one of the games of the week, but I agree with you. I'm liking the under 50.5, and I'm also probably going to be tailing the Colts in this one at plus 3.5. So definitely
Yep.
going to be an
Cool.
interesting game for sure. Not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. What if the Chiefs don't make the playoffs, man? I said it. There we go.
That would be a
There,
shocker. That would
there
be
we
crazy.
go. There we go. And of course, now that I've said
Can't
it,
even entertain the thought.
yeah, now that I've said it, they're rattling off 6 in a row. They're gonna beat the Colts by 13 and and call
There
it
you
a
go. Of
day.
course. Jinxed it.
I jinxed it. I just jinxed it. The next game we have on the slate here, V, is one of my favorites of the week. It's another example of getting in early and getting in often. Honestly, you guys, when you come out of Sunday's games, Sunday night, while right before kickoffs going for Sunday Night Football, you guys need to be going through the apps, looking at next week's look ahead lines and seeing what you like. Things are fresh in your mind. You know these teams, and lines move quite a bit in those opening hours. When the sharps get their money in, that's when you want to get into. And this is a prime example of that. This game is anywhere between 13 to 13.5 points here, where we have the Seattle Seahawks heading into Tennessee to take on the Titans. Game total on this one about 40.5 points. I took this game early in the week at 12.5. It's
Yeah.
now up to 13.5. I'm still not that shy away from it because you get it underneath that key number of 14 points. And I love what you can get out of this Seahawks team, even if it's on the road. This is a big road spread. But frankly, I think the difference between these two teams is absolutely massive. For starters, this Seattle team is the most profitable team in the NFL. They have an 80% cover rate. They travel well. Their 9.4 point average victory margin on the road is in the top 5 in the NFL. And then they absolutely decimate low-level teams. We have seen them absolutely blow the doors off of teams that are not anywhere in their category, and that's what this Tennessee team falls behind in or falls into. And when we talk about just as a favorite in general, the Seahawks hold a 13.3 point average victory margin. I think that when we talk about everything, this Seahawks team has been favored quite a bit. They've had some closer games, but those are against some of the mid to higher level teams. And I know that they just lost against the Rams. They still covered that game as dogs,
Yeah.
regardless of Stafford playing as bad as he did. And I know, V, because you were on the Rams, it was a tough beat for you with given how well, the Rams have played up to this point. They played really well in that game, especially defensively. But the Seahawks defense, they were for real in that one too. And so it was a tough break there. I still think the process was good because three's not that many points, and they definitely could have and should have probably covered that one. Particularly if you told me that Darnold was going to have 3-4,
I was gonna say, how do you get 4 interceptions and you can't cover a 3-point
and
spread?
you
Come on,
can't cover a
bros.
three
You
point
gotta, you
spread.
gotta do better for me, guys.
Yeah,
Not cool.
tough break there, but it also comes into what we just said as well. Is that turnovers are more of a fluky and inconsistent piece of the game, and they come and go as long as the quarterback or whoever's touching the ball primarily isn't putting the ball in danger. And that has been what we've seen from Stafford. This is a team that likes to run the football quite a bit. And when they do run it, then they turn around, run off play action, and throw it deep. And now you have Rashid Shaheed, you have JSN. This is a Titans team who dealt, I think, 2 or 3 corners over the last, 4, 5, 6 weeks before the deadline. Like, this is a team that wasn't wasn't in position to be trading away corners. And this is the type of game that is going to show that. So I'm all in. I don't know what else that we can say as a positive about this Seattle team and how this is a mismatch. Oh, I have one more. I do have one more. So I did a little digging, V. I did a little digging. I looked up EPA per play numbers over the last decade for every team in the NFL through week 11. The Tennessee Titans, right now at minus 0.246, are the worst offense in efficiency over the last decade. And the
Wow.
database goes back to 2006, and I only found a handful of teams that have ever been worse. That's a
That's
really
tough.
bad look. And now they have no Calvin Ridley, who broke his leg last week, and he's going to be out for the rest of the season. It's Cam Ward, a rookie, and his 2 primary receivers are rookies. I don't know where we're going to be getting many points from this Titans team. I'm taking them 13.5. It's going to be one of the easiest covers you find all week, even at 2 scores. Anything you're seeing in this
Yeah.
game, partner?
Nope, right there with you. This is gonna be on my card as well. It's just, what can you say about the Seattle team right now? When we like, I feel like it's the opposite of the Bills, where like you feel so bad about them coming off that loss on Thursday, whereas with Seattle, I feel like maybe better about them coming after that game last week, despite the loss, just because again the fact that your quarterback throws 4 interceptions and you were right there with a chance to win that game at the end on a 60-yard field goal, it just goes to show how good this defense was. I feel like I was probably underrating them going into last week, but they really played well. They showed out. And if you're going to play as well as you did against Stafford in an excellent Rams offense, imagine what you're going to do against this Titans offense that you just explained is one of the worst we've seen over the last 10, 15 years. So this is probably going to be closer to what we saw 2 weeks ago when the Seahawks absolutely demolished the Arizona Cardinals and had multiple defensive scores. Could see the same thing in this one. So yeah, right there with you. I don't care that it's on the road. This team has been excellent on the road. They've probably been better on the road than they have been at home. So I'll take the Seahawks minus whatever against this Titans team.
Minus whatever is a good way to put it. I agree. I agree. This is as close to some of those pro team versus college team hypotheticals that a lot of people put out there, because this is literally a bunch of kids on this team that are going to be starting this week were in college last season. So
Yeah.
the next game on the list here, a
Oh boy.
high profile must watch game if you're listening to Shooter Sanders. The Cleveland Browns head into Las Vegas to take on the Raiders, and 4-point favorites for the Raiders. Game total on this one, I think, tells you everything you're going to need to know. It's 36 points. V, as long as Shador stays out of the casino, unlike George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb, what are you liking in this one?
Oh boy. Easily the ugliest game on the card this week, no doubt about
Bar
it. This
none.
is brutal, bar none. Obviously, the big storyline going into this one is Shador Sanders, but I think what this game is going to come down to is obviously the Cleveland defense. And where do you start with that defense other than Myles Garrett? This dude is just unbelievable. 15 sacks through 10 games this year, leads the NFL. 4 sacks last week against Lamar Jackson, following up a 5 sack performance from earlier in the season. This dude is a beast. This guy is unstoppable. It is going to be an extremely long day for Geno Smith. This is a Raiders offense that is ranked fourth in terms of sacks allowed. Geno Smith has hit the ground quite a bit, taken 31 sacks this year. The Raiders offensive line might be the worst in the NFL. They can't open up holes for their first round running back, and they don't give their quarterback any time to do anything in the pocket. They struggled last week against a Dallas defense that has been mostly terrible all season. If you can't score against the Cowboys, what are you going to do against a Cleveland defense that has actual behemoths on the defensive line with not just Myles Garrett, but also Mason Graham, who's playing very well, and also Carson Schlesinger, who's, I think, in the lead right now for Defensive Rookie of the Year. Too many good players on this defensive side of the football. I just don't understand what the Raiders offense is going to be able to do. I don't know how the Raiders can be favored by this many points against any team in the league, given what we've seen from them all season. This is a brutal matchup. I just think this Cleveland defensive line is going to overman this Raiders offensive line. It's not going to be much of a competition this one. There might not be any offensive touchdowns, but there's going to be at least one or two from Cleveland. I think they're going to have their way with the Raiders offense.
This is definitely this is one of those matchups that it is going to be brutally ugly on both sides. I
For sure.
I I have a little bit more faith. So first and foremost, you're 100% correct. When we talk about this Browns defense, they don't really quite get the credit because they're 2-8. But wow, this Browns
Yeah.
defense is for real. And somebody please, for the health and safety of the NFL, go and get Myles Garrett off of this Browns
Please
team for all
pay
of
for
us.
Max Crosby, man. Get these guys on some real NFL teams. Oh my God.
Yes. So in just as perspective, Myles Garrett, yes, 15 sacks, leads the NFL, and he is on pace to break the single season record. Now, to also put that into perspective, there are five, no, excuse me, six players that are edge rushers who win their matchups, pass rush win rates above 20% in the league. Myles Garrett is at 27.8% at first in the NFL. Now, why that's important is because what that means is sometimes people scoff at what pass rush win rate, that doesn't mean sacks. It's like, no, it's an indicator of how likely you are to reach the quarterback. Because if you're
Yep.
beating the man in front of you, you have a better opportunity to pile up sacks than guys who might get locked up a little bit and have to, sort of rely on the quarterback crossing their face and them getting a cleanup. Now, there's a lot that goes into defensive line play, but that is one truth is that pass rush win rate is very indicative of how well you're rushing the passer. Myles Garrett has led the NFL for many, many years in that fact. He is a game wrecker against even some of the best tackles in the NFL. This week, he gets Stone Forsythe at left
Who?
tackle. Exactly.
Is that
Exactly.
a real person?
That's a Madden created player, essentially.
Yeah.
No, no disrespect to Stone. He's fine. He's a replacement level tackle. That's what he's supposed to be. But that is the point, is that this guy could Miles Garrett could retire tomorrow before the age of 30 and be a first ballot Hall of Famer. That's how good this guy is. And that's the clear mismatch that we're going to be seeing in this game. On the other side, I have massive, massive concerns. The Raiders are a bad offensive line. Cleveland might be worse. That's
Ooh,
how
you think?
bad they're so bad, particularly on the
Mm.
outside. They're a little bit better on the interior. But particularly on the outside, this is a struggle. And I think Max Crosby could absolutely eat. And one of the big things is that Shadur, especially coming out, he was knocked as taking way too many sacks. He was the most sacked quarterback in that class, and his pressure to sack ratio his pressure to sack rate was very bad, particularly against good teams, upwards of 20%. Now, it's a very small sample what we saw last week, but it was upwards of 20%. And there were a lot of times where he starts to break the pocket and you go, oh gosh, this isn't looking great. And it's not that he can't move, it's just that he moves when he should be getting rid of the football. I think he thinks of himself as, you know, his dad. I think he doesn't have that same athleticism, frankly. And what we have seen is behind this Cleveland offensive line, they're the lowest graded pass blocking offensive line in the NFL, and it's not close. They are very, very bad. And when you put those two things together, I have concerns. The 36 in this game could clear by 10, 15 points. Like, that's how concerned I am by
Yeah.
both of these teams.
No, that's
Um,
all. That's 100% going to be in my card as well. That's going to be a gross under. You're going to have to take it. I mean, I don't know what
yeah.
else you can do.
And the only saving grace of this one is like what we saw last week is Baltimore blitzed Shador a lot. And they threw the kitchen sink at him. They have this stunt that I love watching where they put double mug in the A gap, and one of those guys is Kyle Hamilton, and Kyle
Mm.
Hamilton rips off the center, and then they have someone looping right behind Kyle Hamilton, and it freaks people out because the back's like, there's Kyle Hamilton. That's the guy I'm supposed to be blocking. And he comes in to get Kyle Hamilton, but the whole 3/4 of the offensive line is over here. And there's a huge runway for them to just send pass rushers down. Blitzers just scream down those holes. And that's what we've seen a lot from them over the last 3, 4 weeks. And we saw them pull that blitz, I think, 2 or 3 times against Shador. He never saw it once. And that really hammered him. That big hit that he took, the massive hit, that it was like, I felt it in my bones when he took that hit and delivered that football. And I think that was an interception. I'm not quite sure. I forget if that's the one he threw the interception on. But he took a massive hit on that play. The only saving grace here is Vegas is not that creative. Vegas doesn't blitz. They stunt a little bit, and maybe that becomes an issue, but they don't really blitz. My other concern is that they go, this is the formula. We're going to blitz a whole bunch this week because Shador's not going to be able to do anything if we do. There's two sides of that coin. But again, the pathway for Cleveland to cover this game actually doesn't rely on Shador, and it doesn't rely on Geno. It relies on which one of these teams gets the running game going. And when we talk about that, you mentioned that. Ashton Genty, a really, really good back. He's playing behind debatably the worst run blocking offensive line in the NFL. They can't get him any yardage before contact. And that's going to be an issue where on the other side, because Cleveland is at least okay in the interior, they run the football pretty well. And Quinshon Judkins is no slouch himself. So
No.
I think that that's going to be the big key in this one. We're going to see a hard-nosed game. It's going to end up being like 10-3. And I think Cleveland can win a game like that more than I think that potentially the Raiders could. So it's going to be interesting. You're not going to see this game on Red Zone
No,
at all. Maybe you are
no.
because it's Shador. Every time Shador drops back, Scott Hansen's going to
Are you
flip
just
over
gonna
there.
cut in every time Miles Garrett or Max Crosby gets a sack? I'm sure there's got to be a prop bet in there. Their number of sacks versus like quarterback completions in this game. I might take the
You
sacks.
literally could.
It's,
You legitimately
yeah,
could.
it's gonna be bad. Yeah.
And unfortunately, V, we got the good games out of the way off the rip because this next game on the slate, it's not as
Ooh,
ugly as
this is a rough
Cleveland
one too.
Vegas, but this is another ugly game. And
How does this
luckily,
get flexed into the afternoon slot? What are we doing here? Come on.
I do not know. These are two games. What are all the games in the afternoon slot? Let's see. We have the both of these games. If so, for anybody that doesn't know, I did not put these games at the end just to make you guys suffer at the end. I put them because that's the chronological order that they're going to be coming in.
Right.
That's why. That's why the four afternoon games are Jags Cardinals, Browns Raiders, Falcons Saints, Eagles Cowboys. So everybody is going to probably be getting Eagles Cowboys.
Yep. They always gotta shove the Cowboys down our throats, right?
uh, they won. Actually,
Against the Raiders.
yes. I'm interested to see how that defense plays though. I really am because they looked way better and I frankly I was handicapping that game earlier trying to find some prop angles and I just could not figure it out for the life of me.
Yeah, that
Um,
one's a tough one.
that's a really tough one. But this one, not quite as tough. We know another ugly game. We have the Atlanta Falcons heading into New Orleans. At least we get a divisional matchup here. The Saints -2.5 at home. Game total on this one 40.5 points. And I'm going to rip the band-aid off right here. I am taking the under at 40.5 points. This is one of my favorite bets of the week.
Yep.
The quarterback play in this one is going to be rough. It's going to be ugly. When we talk about Atlanta, which is where I'll start, no Michael Penix Jr., Kirk Cousins is going to start. No Drake London. Their receivers this week, Darnell Mooney, David Sills, Kadarrell Hodge. That's who's going to be getting the snaps at receiver. Now, in previous years, you could trust Darnell Mooney. This isn't one of those years. He left his hands in, Cabo or something because they're not with him. He's had numerous drops, not really getting separation. This does not look like the same guy that was sort of a sleeper to break out last season. It just has not been that case. And when we talk about how this offense operates with both Penix and Cousins, it is literally night and day. In EPA per play, while Michael Penix Jr. is on the field, this team is 10th. When Kirk Cousins is on the field, this team is 32nd in the NFL, worse than the Titans offense that we just talked about being the worst over the past decade. And it's by a
Yeah.
mile. It's by a mile. And Cousins is now granted, the sample for Cousins is more or less 1.5 games. He came in at the end of the blowout against Carolina and he came in against the Dolphins. But when we say his starts, particularly the game against Miami, that game coincidentally had no Drake London. They scored 10 total points. And at the time, this Miami defense couldn't stop the run. They had let up a bunch of big games. Bijan Robinson had 25 rushing yards. And why is that? Why is that some sort of crazy flip? They didn't add new players. They didn't get people back, that them being the Miami defense. It was that they loaded up the box and said, I dare you to beat us with Kirk Cousins. And he could not
Yep.
answer. He could not answer. New Orleans can use that blueprint because they are good against the run. They are top 10 in EPA per run allowed. They're 8th in yards per carry allowed on designed runs. And then when we flip the script and talk about their offense, some people are higher on Tyler Shuck than others. He's, I think, 3 starts into his career, very small sample, and he's graded out decently well. I think he has like a 70 passing grade in pretty much all of those games. So, not a bad look for him. Overall, though, this offense has not been productive with him out there, and it's not necessarily all his fault because the offense is pretty strapped. The offensive line hasn't really played that well, even though they made a bunch of investments along it. They just sent Raheed Shaheed packing. Now, the running game, Alvin Kamara is, I mean, he's getting a little long in the
Not
tooth.
who it used to be for sure.
Not what he used to be. So when we talk about it, this is a young guy. I mean, not technically young, but young and inexperienced. Team totals this season, while Shuck has been the quarterback, they had 3 versus Tampa, 10 versus the Rams, 17 versus Carolina. Now, Tampa Bay, they're solid enough defense. They're not really the upper echelon of the NFL, but they're not really the bottom of the NFL either. The Rams, we don't need to talk about the Rams, are obviously electric. And he had a little bit of progression there. 10 points versus 3. Carolina, not really up there in the top, or not really up there above the, bottom 10 defenses in the NFL in most efficiency metrics. They scored 17. And frankly, it could have been 10 if that OPI on the deep Olave touchdown was called, because that was a pretty bad push off. I don't know that I've seen one that bad in quite a while. So when we talk about what that translates to and how this offense is scoring per drive, their scoring drive percentage with Shuck, 21.7%. The next lowest team, Tennessee, 26.4%. 5 percentage points higher. That is a really tough look. And while Atlanta isn't a top tier defense either, they are one of 2 teams that blitzes at over 50% of their passing downs. Shuck, when blitzed, 0 for 9 and an interception. He has completed more passes to the other team than his own team when blitz. Well, not just when blitz and pressured. So when the blitz
Right.
does get there. Now any quarterback is going to be half decent if you blitz and don't get pressure there. But when getting pressured after the blitz, it's a tough look for him. So that's where I'm sort of at with this situation. I think both quarterbacks are really going to struggle in a game where Kirk Cousins has no weapons and the Saints can load the box. And then on the other side, the Falcons can blitz the face off of Shuck and force them to run. Now, the Falcons defense isn't really that good against the run, but we're talking about 40.5 points. This isn't 36. This game is probably mispriced by 3 points. Like, it's not a great look for them. So that's where I'm headed with this one. Partner, do you see anything in this game that I might have missed?
No, I think you covered a lot of it. I think that for me, the biggest takeaway or the biggest disappointment, I guess I would say, is just the lack of efficiency in the running game for the Falcons, which you already brought up. I mean, it doesn't feel like it was that long ago when Bijan was running all over the Bills on Monday night. I mean, that was an amazing game and an amazing performance by him and that Atlanta offense. And then for them to do what they've done since then, which is pretty much nothing on the ground against defenses that you should be able to take advantage of, is very disappointing. I'm not entirely sure why they haven't been able to find that success on the ground, despite having not just a great player in Bijan, but one of the better backups in Tyler Algier, and they're just not doing a lot in terms of yardage on the ground. They have, got into the end zone a few times here and there in short yardage situations, but in terms of overall yardage and efficiency, it doesn't seem like it's there right now. And that's disappointing. If they're not going to be able to figure that out with Kirk Cousins out there and with no Drake London, then what chance do you have to score points? Because you're not going to throw it to Kyle Pitts because for whatever reason you don't ever feel like doing that. You already mentioned Mooney hasn't been reliable, and like I don't know, like you don't have anybody else. So like you have to get things going with Bijan if you want to be successful, if you want to score points. And they're kind of back to square one where they have to prove that they know how to do that. And until they do, yeah, fine taking any unders involving the Falcons.
I mean, and you can even talk about the Drake London game where, yeah, against New England a couple weeks ago, 118, 3 touchdowns, and it just
Right.
feels like they have some of these more impressive players, particularly at the skill positions in the NFL, and they just can't figure out how to get them the football or get them into positions to win. And that's a really bad look for a team. And I don't think it all comes down to Penix not having some sort of ability, because we've seen him make his fair share of plays. Now he's got a long way to go. He's still a young quarterback, but now that he's out, I mean, it's going to be a really tough look with Kirk Cousins, who's obviously struggling as well. So this is
Yep.
going to be a tough watch as well. I don't think we're going to see that one on Red Zone very much either. V, oh my gosh, we had a message that I missed
No.
earlier. Falcons OC doing them no favors either on the field. Going to be a rough week for Atlanta, even with the Saints so-so performance. I mean, I completely agree. That's sort of what I was alluding to just a second ago with, wow, like, you know, it's not all Penix. They have pieces. They're just not really getting put into position to win. So,
No, I mean that coaching staff is not going to be here next year, so
no,
it's
no.
it's tough. It's tough all around there.
Yeah, yeah. And, hey, who knows? Maybe you could bring Mike McDaniel in to be the OC.
Let's do it.
That
You can do some things with Mike
you
McDaniel as your
literally
play
that's
caller.
exactly. Like that's the position that we're at. While it sounds facetious in practice, it's literally maybe the best thing that could happen for them. So,
Yeah.
and that wraps us up, V, for week 12. We will not be back the same time next week because obviously, or will we? Maybe. Stay
We
tuned
have to
for
figure
that.
it out.
We have to figure that out, obviously, with the holiday weekend. But until we see you guys next time, happy holidays. Enjoy some food, enjoy some time with your family. And of course, hit us up, importantnonsense.com. That's how you become a member. You become a member to get into our Discord. You get all of our picks there. You can ask us any questions about any bets that you're thinking about, as well as talking up the fantasy guys on your playoff push in fantasy. Make sure you get in there and ask them all your questions. And of course, hit up all of our shows all week long. Here at, what is it? Important Nonsense on YouTube and Nonsense FF on Twitch. So make sure you guys hit us up there. V, I think that about does it. Do you have any parting words for the folks at home?
Yeah, you covered it all. Enjoy the slate of games this weekend, and if we don't catch up with everybody before the holidays next week, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Should be fun week and a half of nonstop football. So everybody enjoy, and we'll catch up with everybody next time.
Until next time, y'all. Good night. Good luck.